The three men who vanished without a trace, or the Flannan Isles mystery. On the morning of December 2006, the 1900, a relief vessel approached one of the loneliest places in Britain, a tiny rocky island in the North Atlantic known as Eilean Moor, part of Scotland's Flannan Isles. 3 lighthouse keepers were waiting there, or at least they should have been. Instead, the lighthouse stood silent. The lamp was dark, no signal greeted the approaching ship, no one waited on the landing platform. When the crew finally reached the lighthouse, they found a scene that seemed ordinary at first glance. The beds had been slept in. The kitchen held the remains of a recent meal. A clock on the wall had stopped, but the 3 men assigned to the station, principal keeper James Duckett, second assistant Thomas Marshall, and occasional keeper Donald MacArthur, had disappeared without leaving a single confirmed trace. No bodies were ever found. More than a century later, one question still refuses to disappear. What happened to the 3 lighthouse keepers of the Flannan Isles? Team Chaland, at the edge of the world, the island. The Flannan Isle Lewis, in Scotland's Outer Hebrides. The islands are small, steep, and surrounded by powerful Atlantic currents. For centuries, local fishermen avoided staying there overnight. They believed the islands carried an unsettling reputation, rooted in old Gaelic traditions and religious legends. Whether those stories had any truth was another matter. By the late 19th century, Britain was rapidly expanding its network of lighthouses to protect commercial shipping. The seas around the Flannan Isles had already claimed numerous vessels, and in 1899 the Northern Lighthouse Board completed a modern lighthouse on the largest island, Eilean Moor. Life there demanded discipline. 3 keepers always staffed the station while a 4th remained on shore, rotating every few weeks. Their responsibilities never stopped. The light had to operate flawlessly every night. Machinery required constant maintenance. Weather observations had to be recorded daily. Every detail was logged with military precision. Isolation became part of the job. Weeks could pass without seeing another human being beyond the other 2 keepers. The men assigned to the station in December 1900 were experienced professionals. James Duckett served as principal keeper. He had spent years working remote stations and was respected for his reliability. Thomas Marshall had previously survived dangerous storms while serving at other Scottish lighthouses. His superiors considered him calm under pressure. Donald MacArthur was different. He was only temporarily replacing another keeper. Before joining the lighthouse service, he had worked as a sailor and was known as a physically strong man with a fiery temper. Ironically, colleagues often joked that he feared very little. No one suspected that all 3 would soon become part of one of Britain's greatest mysteries. The first sign something was wrong. The first indication of trouble came not from the island itself, but from ships passing through the area. On the evening of December 15th, several captains reportedly noticed that the Flannan Lighthouse was not displaying its usual light despite poor weather conditions. Under normal circumstances, such a failure posed a serious danger to navigation, yet stormy seas prevented anyone from reaching the island immediately. The scheduled relief ship, the Hesperus, was itself delayed by severe Atlantic weather. Days passed. Christmas came and went. No one knew what was happening on Eilean Moor, a silent lighthouse. Shortly before noon on December 26th, Captain James Harvey finally brought the Hesperus close enough to the island. Normally, one of the keepers would already be waiting near the landing place after spotting the approaching vessel. This time, no one appeared. The ship's whistle echoed across the cliffs. Nothing. A distress rocket was fired. Still nothing. Relief keeper Joseph Moore volunteered to go ashore alone. As he climbed the steep stone steps toward the lighthouse, an uncomfortable silence surrounded him. No voices, no movement, only wind and crashing waves. When Moore reached the entrance, he found the main door closed. Inside, everything appeared strangely orderly. The oil lamps had been cleaned, the beds had been used. The kitchen table suggested the men had recently eaten. One chair, however, had been pushed back awkwardly, leading some early reports to suggest that someone had left in a hurry. Later, historians questioned whether this detail had been exaggerated over time. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, no damaged furniture. The men had simply vanished. The missing equipment. The investigators immediately began checking the station. Several details stood out. 2 sets of heavy waterproof oilskin coats were missing. 1 coat remained hanging inside. This observation would become one of the most debated pieces of evidence. According to lighthouse regulations, no keeper was supposed to leave the station without proper weather gear. Yet one man apparently had. Why? Even stranger, the lighthouse machinery itself remained in excellent working condition. The lamp had gone out simply because no one remained alive or present to maintain it. Nothing indicated mechanical failure. The mystery centered entirely on the disappearance of the men. The West Landing. Attention soon shifted to the island's western landing platform. This area served as one of the most dangerous access points on Eilean Moor. Their investigators found unmistakable storm damage. A storage box positioned more than 100 feet above sea level had been smashed. Iron railings had been bent, heavy ropes had been torn away, large rocks weighing several tons had been displaced. Evidence suggested an enormous force had struck the coastline. But one question immediately emerged. If conditions had become that dangerous, why would all three experienced keepers leave the safety of the lighthouse? Standard procedure required at least one keeper to remain inside at all times. Breaking that rule made little sense. Official investigation. Robert Muirhead, superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, traveled personally to inspect the island. He already knew the keepers. His investigation focused on physical evidence rather than local legends. After carefully examining the damaged landing area, Muirhead concluded that severe Atlantic waves had likely swept across the rocks while the men were attempting to secure equipment during the storm. His theory suggested that one keeper went outside. A second followed to help. The third eventually left the lighthouse as well. Then an unexpected giant wave struck all three simultaneously, washing them into the sea. The Atlantic would have carried the bodies away long before search teams arrived. It was a logical explanation, yet it left troubling questions unanswered. Why would three highly experienced men ignore established lighthouse procedures? Why was one coat left inside? And if the storm was so dangerous, why leave the relative safety of the lighthouse at all? Those questions have never received definitive answers. Strange logbook entries. Over the decades, another mystery became attached to the case. According to popular books and television programs, the lighthouse logs supposedly contained bizarre entries. One entry claimed Thomas Marshall wrote about fierce winds unlike any he had ever witnessed. Another described Donald MacArthur, a man known for his toughness, as crying. A final entry allegedly stated, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." These dramatic passages spread through newspapers, documentaries, and mystery books for decades. There was only one problem. Researchers later discovered no official evidence that these diary entries ever existed. Historians examining surviving lighthouse records found no such pages in the official archives. Many now believe the entries were invented years later by writers attempting to dramatize the mystery. Ironically, one of the most famous parts of the Flannan story may itself be a myth. That realization forces historians back to the physical evidence, and the physical evidence remains incomplete. On the